Salve amici. In un'Italia ancora pressoché ignara di cosa fossero le esperienze di contatto, i rapimenti alieni, il 13 ottobre 1998 arriva a Roma Travis Walton, il più importante rapito di tutti i tempi. Ebbi modo di intervistarlo in un albergo vicino alla sala dove si raccolsero 1000 persone per sentire le testimonianze degli addotti e degli esperti. E fu un'intervista per me veramente importantissima. Travis, con lui poi sono diventato anche molto amico, ci siamo visti più volte, sia in Italia che negli Stati Uniti. La sua esperienza è inoppugnabile, inattaccabile. E questa testimonianza, che è la prima che io raccolsi con lui, ve la dovete proprio gustare, anche se è in inglese, metteremo i sottotitoli. La lasciamo con l'audio originale. E allora, buona visione amici, con la mia prima intervista a Travis Walton.
Più di 30 minuti. Allora, veniamo subito ad un punto importante, quello delle regressioni ipnotiche. Travis, we were talking about you not liking too much to get involved with hypnotic regressions at that time. I mean, after your experience.
Yes.
Would you please explain us why?
Well, at the time, the hypnotic regression, the main thing that they were trying to do was just allow me to tell what happened without so much of the fear that I had been experiencing, because, you know, up to that time, every time I tried to talk about it, I would just break down because I was so emotionally traumatic. But so the hypnosis improved that. You know, it allowed me to relate what had happened without much new details, except for one thing. Dr. Harder found that when he tried to get into the question of whether there were more memories that might have been repressed, that couldn't be recalled, that there was a threat that I would die if the hypnosis was pushed further. I'm not sure what Dr. Harder's opinion was, but some of the experts that were present thought that perhaps that this may have been my own subconscious fears, that maybe there wasn't any other memories. But my brother witnessed the hypnosis, and he told me about this, and he advised me not to pursue it any farther because, you know, it might be dangerous. And so, you know, I never have, and I thought that, well, also that if there were other memories, what would be the benefit of bringing them out? It might be very much more difficult to deal with these memories, and that I might, you know, sort of renew the trauma and just have a whole lot more to cope with.
But let's say that the advantage could be to obtain more informations, not about you, how much you were scared or not, but informations about who abducted you, the circumstances, I mean the entire situation, and the people involved in the operation on you.
Yeah, you know, and I wrestled back and forth with the possibility of doing more hypnosis, and I was, you know, very curious about it. It really bothered me about what might have been going on there, what might explain things, all the unanswered questions. But I finally resolved not to mess with it, you know, that it was so much to deal with, and that people's reaction to the information was, you know, had such a negative impact on my life, and I just never have wanted to undergo any further hypnosis.
One point that, for instance, came out during our works a couple of days ago here in Rome was that you were given back to reality, all naked, and just standing in a nearby town, or in your town eventually, in a snowflake, and that obviously you had a chance to call up the operator, not having a dime in your pocket.
Yeah.
And people were noisy in the audience, because in Italy we don't have that kind of possibility. You cannot call the operator not spending a dime or a quarter. Please explain to them, otherwise they will never understand how you get to get free and then to get help from your friends.
Okay, in the movie they represented that I was without clothing when I was returned, but actually, you know, I was dressed in the same clothes that I was taken in. I didn't have any change in my pockets, but in that part of the country at that time, you could call the operator just by dialing a 0, and you didn't have to have any coins. And so I made the collect call to my family, and I also found out later from the police that the operator was aware that I had been missing, and her interest was really intensified by the emotion in my voice and everything, and she listened in on the call, which is something they're not supposed to do, but nevertheless she did, and she tipped off the sheriff's office that the call had been made, and the sheriff ordered a man out there to the telephone, but by then my family had already taken me away.
And
but they did confirm that the by that method that the phone call did come from that phone booth, and
for how many days you got the sensation? I mean, what was the outcome afterwards for you in the beginning when you were released? For the first few days, what happened to you?
I was very, very traumatized when I first came back. The investigators who witnessed my condition described me as looking totally fearful. They call it like shell-shocked, you know, like after the war. They called it, they said that I looked like a wild animal in a cage, you know, that I was in a very desperate sort of mental condition. And this was very intense up until the regressive hypnosis, which did help some, but you know, it didn't make it go completely away. I was in really bad shape for weeks, even months after, and it just sort of diminished very slowly with time.
But for your experience, for instance, want to know, you went in the army?
No, I've not been in
No.
the military.
But you're saying that eventually getting caught in under fire or whatever could be a very damaging, from a point of view, psychological point of view, personality of a kid that's 19 or 20 years old and goes in battle and sees fires and so on. You said to me that you were also practicing martial arts, so suppose at that time, were you practicing?
Yes, I had been practicing martial arts at that time.
In that moment, you were practically aware of the fact that you can defend yourself physically with bare hands.
Yes.
What happened when you had the confrontation with the creatures?
When they started towards me, I was mentally preparing, you know, what sort of techniques I was going to use against them to get past them, to get to the doorway beyond them. And I had just about figured out what sort of moves I was going to make when they abruptly turned and left the room, and avoided that making it necessary that I, you know, jump at them in that way. But one of the things that benefited me in my experience was I was in a lot of pain, and in Taekwondo, my instructor had taught us in methods of pain control, that when you're experiencing extreme pain, how to control this with your mind. And that was of great benefit to me when I was first regaining consciousness. I was in a lot of pain, and I was able to get control of that pain using those techniques.
But you thought that eventually you were pretty able to knock them out, even if they were 3 or 4 or 5.
Yes. Even though I was in a lot of pain and really physically very weakened for some reason, when I pushed them away from me, they fell back very easily, and they did not seem very strong or very heavy. They fell back kind of easily. So I wasn't really afraid of them in the physical sense, but you know, it was just that they were just so terrifying in their appearance. And I guess it was the combination of feeling trapped, you know, that they were between me and the door, and that I was having trouble breathing. I felt like I was suffocating. It just made this panic feeling in me, and that made my fear much greater.
Daryl Sims theorizes that these aliens, or one of the races that's the Greys, in other words, are definitely fearing us in terms of physical confrontation, because they are shorter, they're very frail, they're not strong like us. From the anatomical point of view, the human body is a machine that's supposedly better than theirs. What do you think about this?
Well, you know, just my own personal contact with them, pushing them away, they fell back so easily and seemed so weak, and they turned and left, you know, when I think that that's probably quite an accurate summary there, because, you know, it'd be like if we had a 400 or 500 pound gorilla and it suddenly, you know, regained consciousness and was very, very terrified of us. We'd want to keep our distance, I think.
But there were also somebody else in the ship.
Yes.
That you met.
Individuals that looked human to me, to where I at first took them to be human and thought I was being rescued by them. But then later I came to believe that maybe they were just of an alien species that resembled us to a great extent. But then more in recent years, information coming out about possible involvement between these entities and some Earth organization makes me now suspect that perhaps these human-looking individuals actually were humans. I can't be certain, you know. I do recall that there was something sort of odd about their eyes that I never could quite figure out. When I was working with the artist to represent how they looked, I never could get that part of it accurately, but you know, to capture that effect of the strangeness in the eyes. But so, you know, whether or not they are actually human or just resemble human, I can't say for certain.
But the one that escorted you out from the machine was wearing a helmet?
Yes, he was wearing a helmet over his head, and I took this to be protection from the atmosphere. And another thing that supports that idea is that I was having a lot of trouble breathing in there. It seemed very hot and humid and stale, and like I just couldn't catch my breath. But when I was taken outside of the ship into this other enclosure, it seemed much easier to breathe, and I was able to catch my breath somewhat.
He didn't say anything to you, just escorted you like this.
Didn't say anything.
Professor Hynek got involved in the investigation on your case very shortly after it happened.
Yes.
Your relationship with Professor Hynek?
I found Dr. Hynek to be extremely objective and scientific in his approach, and he didn't jump to conclusions. He looked at the evidence, and he waited to make an in-person investigation with me before making any sort of public pronouncements. Many people were after him for an opinion, and he didn't give his opinion until after he'd spoken with me. And he had a press conference the next day, and told them that he felt that my case was genuine and that I had been made the object of a lot of unfounded accusations. And so he was very good.
And let's say that the Walton case, the Walton experience, was a turning point for the modern overview of the abduction phenomenon. In other words, before you, just the hills were famous,
Yes.
so-called famous.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the abduction, nobody knew anything.
Yeah, at the time this incident happened to me, these sorts of reports were really quite rare and subject to extremely intense scrutiny, scientific sense. And these reports are much more common today, and I think perhaps in some cases not given enough rigorous and scientific testing, in the sense of, the validity of the incidents.
What's going on right now? Why we do have an increase, a worldwide, steady but very, very large increase of the abduction phenomenon?
I have heard that this phenomena has increased to an incredible degree, and I find this very amazing, because to me it seemed like such an extremely rare incident that I think that perhaps there may be several phenomena going on here simultaneously, and not all of them of the same order as my own experience. But in the aftermath of my incident, I found it so hard to cope with, and there was no real support groups or nowhere to turn, no professionals who could really deal with this sort of thing. That one of the methods that I used to cope with this was to shy away from the subject, to just shut it out, to not think about my experience, and certainly not the experiences of others. So I worked very hard at sort of ignoring the phenomenon. And so in that sense, I have failed to do very much research about other sorts of incidents, and therefore I'm pretty poorly informed about them. So it would be improper for me to comment to any great extent about these incidents because I haven't done the proper research. I've been critical of those who attacked my case for having passed judgment without checking the facts. And so I don't want to become guilty of the same thing and pass judgment on anyone's case without having investigated that case. And so I quote the American author Emerson in my book that condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance. And so, I don't want to be guilty of that. So, but just, in a general sense, it seems like things are, more is becoming known, and that perhaps in the future, some rather startling developments are in store.
Do you think that it's even possible, or totally far out, the fact that in 1954 the Americans signed a contract, or let's say a deal with the aliens, or one race of the aliens?
Well, you know, I don't have any specific information about those kinds of things, but knowing what little I do about the United States government, they have released documents under the Freedom of Information Act concerning UFOs, and yet, although they're supposed to be coming clean with this information, huge portions of these documents are still blacked out. So my question is, what is it they're still hiding? What is it they're still keeping secret? I think that there's definitely a great deal more that they know that they're not making known to the world.
I mean, you've seen the Santilli tape, isn't it?
I've seen portions of it, yes.
The autopsy is an autopsy. That guy, I saw two autopsies, two different autopsies taken in the same situation, by the way, two different creatures, one totally intact, the other one damaged on his leg and so far. I believe I have reason to say that that material was released by this so-called operator Barnett for a specific reason. And the scheme of releasing the steadily but continuously and slowly these materials enables us, normal human people, to human beings, to understand the approach to alien life forms calmly enough in order to keep the shock and not die, you know what I mean?
You know, in my very first book, The Walton Experience, that I published back in 1977, I actually speculated on that very idea that perhaps the growing amount of evidence, the growing provability, the more detailed and more verifiable things that continue to occur in a sort of increasing progression may be part of a conditioning program to gradually accustom.
It's better if we start back.
Oh boy.
The last part.
What did I say? Perhaps a more open sort of knowledge about this situation in the future.
But the creatures lying down on the table where they were supposedly out of size afterwards weren't at all close to the ones you met, or were they?
I don't know about those tapes. I've heard various opinions. It's quite remarkable. There is a certain similarity to what I saw, but anything that's lying there dead, has an unnatural sort of look to it. So, I'll leave that to the experts. But still, the release of the tape, whether it's real or not, could be a piece of this information designed towards the same end. Whether it was faked by some agency that wishes people to become accustomed to the idea, or it was something real and they're just wanting to show a little bit more for the same purpose. In either case, it's having the same effect. People are becoming aware of this, more accepting on a broader scale, and are perhaps being prepared for something more overt in the future.
Tell me something about your family. I know that you love your kids. How many?
I have 4 children, 2
4.
boys and
Go ahead.
2 girls, and I'm quite proud of them. They're a great bunch of kids. One of the investigators at the conference here, Daryl Sims, commented on the frequency of experiencers that he's encountered that are of Irish and American Indian descent, and he sees this as being more common than you would expect, and I do have some Irish and American Indian in my ancestry. So that's interesting from that standpoint. I don't know, how widespread this is, or if anybody's done any actual numbers, statistical analysis of that, but it was enough that he commented on it.
But there's not let's say people are not bothering you anymore about your past experience, that therefore your family is not badly affected nowadays about it.
Well, the family has had things to cope with, from people who are disbelieving. Most of the people in a small town, get to know people, it's easier to get to know someone, and we have found that the more they know us, the more accepting they are. They know what kind of people we are. It's only the people who don't know us very well and are very unfamiliar with the facts that say the worst things.
Dana was your girlfriend at that time.
Yes, she was.
So she never left you.
She never left me. She's been with me ever since. She stood by me, and that I got to give her a lot of credit for that, because it hasn't always been easy. With the movie and with time, more information came out and people grew in their acceptance, but it used to be a lot worse, and it wasn't always pleasant for her, but she stood by me.
What's the story of this redoing a movie on your subject, or maybe a docudrama, whatever? Tell me.
I spoke with an individual who was interested in getting together a group of investors who would purchase the movie and reshoot parts of it to make it more accurate and more in keeping with the actual story. And that's something that's just, hasn't produced anything yet, but it's a possibility in the future. I'd like to see that happen.
Do you think that the American scientists are cooperating with the Army or the Pentagon in order to establish a definite point of being the toughest in the world?
Yes, I think, some scientists, and it's not a vast conspiracy in which they're all in on it, but I believe many of the top scientists are working in that direction. And, it's part of the realities of anything, any profession. They have a career, they want to advance, and in order to even do science, to have access to the sorts of equipment and funding that is necessary, they have to go a certain way in their thinking, and the ones that don't get to do their science. So there's a great deal of pressure to cooperate, and I believe there's quite a bit of cooperation of that sort.
But you think that Lazar, John Lear, Hamilton, some of the insiders, let's say, are just giving such revelations for a certain purpose, or is just because of they willing to establish that they are free to say anything they know?
Well, I think that part of it, part of what's coming out are genuine leaks, and part of it is calculated leaks in order to, since they can't stop it, they want to put their own spin on it, to sort of control the direction it goes. They're directing certain measured leaks, bits of information. Conspiracies always fall apart over time, and there's no perfectly kept secrets. So, like the Watergate thing or whatever, you have too many people knowing a certain secret information. It's impossible to maintain it forever. Eventually, the truth will come out.
Like Roswell, for instance.
Yes, there are many discrepancies, a lot of mix of disinformation and information, and I haven't studied the case. I don't know about it, but like with anything, time reveals much.
What is your job today? And then what are your plans for the future?
Well, you know, right now I have an agreement with my publisher to continue to speak out about this incident and, you know, promote the book. But I think that in the future there could come a time when I just don't speak about this anymore. You know, there are unpleasant aspects to it, you know, people's reaction to it, plus just having to recall such unsettling memories that, you know, after a while I may cease to talk about this at all. I think for right now, though, it's important that people be made aware of certain things.
Your friends and colleagues that were with you, that was a night or a morning? 4 or 5 in the morning, isn't it?
No, this happened in the evening, late evening.
In the evening, yeah.
Just after sunset.
Are they still friends of yours?
Well, some of them are still friendly to me. I mean, we were together, the crew, mostly for the purposes of work, and some of them I haven't spoken to in years. But others, I know where they are. You know, I've spoken to them on the phone a year or two ago, but they're all still, you know, stand by their stories, but have basically gotten on with their lives.
Thank you, Mr.
As I intend to.
Okay, last question can be, let's say that 20 years passed after Close Encounters of the Third Kind to Independence Day. What are we going to see in 20 years from now? In the movies, I mean. Well,
the movies may turn out to be sort of a fictional forecast of real events. And, you know, like the movies, we have a whole range of possibilities there, from lovable, huggable little ETs, or all-out military attacks on the world. But, you know, I think that we need to be prepared for any eventuality. I personally don't have enough information to say whether they're evil or have hostile intent, or will be someone that, you know, we can relate to in a very positive way. So we don't want to be wrong about it. We're not prepared, and we need to be ready for whatever happens and not make the wrong moves. So.